A short story. A new look on life. He got out of his sports car and the sun shone pleasantly, which put him in a good mood straightway. Yesterday was one of those days he would sooner forget. Being a Sunday, he visited his parents for lunch for only a short time, as spending too much time with them would, if the truth be told, put him in a bad mood. It wasn't the fact that he didn't love them, but in his line of work he had to be shrewd, and his parents didn't agree with who he'd become, saying that one day it'd catch up with him. He would usually laugh it off, but deep down, this made him angry. And they knew it. His name was Alex, and he adored going to work. He was in his 40s, and at times the stress of work would worry him, but to succeed, you had to be determined. That day he was in his black suit, which looked very smart. He was a handsome chap, and he knew it. He had been with most of the women in his department at one time or another, sometimes going back for seconds. He wasn't complaining. Life to him was a game. Alex loved every second of it. "Hello, mate," came a voice from behind him. He was a few meters from the entrance but turned round to see who it was. "Hi, Gordon. So what's up?" he replied blankly, knowing this bloke was an idiot. Gordon shuffled closer, a nervous look on his face, then said, "You caught me the other day smoking in the gents. Please keep it to yourself, mate. I need this job." What a loser, he thought. Alex neared him and put a hand on his shoulder. "Look, mate. I'm not a grass. I won't say a thing." The man looked relieved, and said more confidently, "I know we don't exactly get on, but I've just realized you're a decent guy." "Thank you." Alex gave him a wink. "We're all in this together, am I right?" "Thanks again," he said. "I must go. I'll buy you a drink sometime." Gordon made his way through the double doors, disappearing into the huge building. Alex then had a plan. He chuckled at his own brilliance. The first thing he did when entering the building was go straight to the man in charge, and with pretend utter despair, explained that he had caught someone smoking in the toilets. The boss then said, "You're a good man, Alex. I know you wouldn't usually grass up a colleague, but this is very serious." Alex looked longingly at the floor. "I'm not a bad man, but smoking kills, and I can't forgive the man for that." Inside he was laughing his head off. The boss placed a strong hand on Alex's shoulder and said, "Tell me his name." Alex was having great fun and with sympathy in his eyes, answered, "It was Gordon." The boss sighed, before saying, "Lately his work has not been up to scratch." "So what'll you do, sir?" he asked. The boss peered at him gravely. "I'm not sure yet, leave it with me. Thanks again for coming to me." "That's okay, sir," was all that Alex said. He made his way out of the man's office with a big smirk on his face. He sat at his desk overlooking paperwork when he saw everyone rushing to the window. He followed them and looking out, he could see a man walking to the car park. In one hand he carried his briefcase and in the other was a box full of pens and pencils, and also a pot plant. With utter glee, he all of a sudden realized who it was. Someone nearby touched his shoulder, then whispered in his ear, "Finally we've got rid of that loser." Before Gordon could get too far away, someone with immense skill had thrown a paper ball through the open window which landed square on the top of his head. Gordon looked up, and he'd been crying. He looked at Alex. Then something strange happened. Without anyone noticing, Alex ran to the toilet and was sick. It had been a long day, and Alex, being sick for no apparent reason, was now a distant memory. Maybe he had eaten something the day before which had upset his stomach. After work, he'd gone out with a couple of colleagues to play 10-pin bowling, then after that, drank some beers with them in a nearby pub, while still laughing about Gordon getting the sack. Alex pulled the car up in the drive. He was tired and needed to sleep badly. In the last minute he'd had a headache, which was odd for him as he never suffered from them usually. He got out and closed the door. He proceeded to the house, then noticed he didn't feel too good. He must have lost balance because the next thing he was aware of was his chin smacking the concrete. He had this horrible feeling of giddiness. A moment later, he was unconscious. He awoke and a woman with grey hair and kind eyes peered back. She said something to him, but he didn't understand a word. He tried to say something back, but all that came out was nonsense. He was sitting down and, for some bizarre reason, he couldn't move his body the way he wanted. She seemed upset by this. Then a man about the same age as her appeared. He also had a worried expression on his face. He couldn't remember anything, but if the truth be told, this didn't worry him. He looked at them and felt safe. A lot of time had passed, but to him it meant nothing. To him, 1 minute was no different to 10 hours. A man dressed in a white uniform would sometimes appear holding up paper with shapes on them. After quite a long while, he realized what the shapes were. He was a quick learner, and before long, he had the ability to speak again. The woman who had dressed him every morning and put him to bed at night was now known as Mother. Most of the time, he would be pushed around in a wheelchair because it was easier. His mother always pushed it, and when the day was pleasant, both would go for a nice stroll in the local park. Life seemed so simple to him. Some children were playing in front while they kicked a ball about on the grass. He tried to shout out to them, but it was difficult. Then he heard his mum say, "Are you enjoying yourself, Alex?" He peered up at her with a beaming smile and said, "Yes, very much. I love being here when the weather is nice. And I love seeing the young ones enjoying the weather." She faced him, then said, "You're improving with your speech, and hopefully one day in the not-so-distant future you'll be able to get back to a normal life again. I love you very much." She kissed him on the forehead. When he was a boy, his determination at times had surprised her, and deep down, she'd been so proud. Alex kind of understood, and nodded to her. "Mother, can we have an ice cream, please?" "Of course you can. You can have anything in the world which you desire, because you're my son." In front was a little shop, and both made their way to it. The dreams he would have were getting worse. Sometimes he would wake up petrified. In the dreams was a man he knew well, because it was him, but the thing that frightened him the most was how he treated others. He felt so ashamed. He glanced at the window one night, and the moon shone through. He quietly muttered, "Was I such a bad man, as the nightmares I have must have been me in a previous life? And if a man can be so cold, then maybe he deserves all the unhappiness that God seems fit to put upon him." Through the walls, he heard Mother and the man now known as Father laughing. A warmness was felt. His walking was improving, and instead of using the wheelchair, he had a walking stick. At first, his mum didn't like the idea at all, but he told her everything would be fine. All she said back was, "I can see the old Alex in you now. I'm so proud." Then he answered, "The man I was is nothing to be proud of. I don't remember everything, but I remember enough." They hugged each other. Then she cried. A knock was heard and Alex, sitting on the sofa, didn't pay much attention. He then heard two people talking. "Are you okay, Mum?" he half shouted, worrying about her as she hated people coming round trying to sell her stuff. She appeared at the door, and behind her was a man he'd never seen before. But surprisingly enough, the face seemed familiar. The man who was about 5 feet 7 inches tall, and as he came nearer, he nervously held his glasses in his left hand, then promptly put them on, and looking at Alex, said, "You probably don't remember me. But I heard what happened and felt like I should pop round and see how you are." Alex smiled and replied, "Thank you." The man wore blue jeans and a white polo shirt. "Is it okay if I sit down?" His mother came forward and ushered him to the sofa. Then she said a little apprehensively, "I'll leave you now, because I have shopping to do. Will you be okay, Alex?" He glanced up at her, and answered a little nervously, "Yes, I should be fine." He couldn't remember in all the time he'd been here, having any visitors. He stared at the man suspiciously. "So, were we good friends?" The man shuffled in his seat, then said, "Yes and no. But I heard what happened, and I'm truly sorry. This is why I'm here, because I want to help." Alex sighed. "I'm sorry. You seem a nice person. The thing is, Mum sometimes tells me about my previous life, but she doesn't tell me everything, and lately I've been having disturbing nightmares which all involve me." "Was I a bad person?" he asked. "No worse than anyone else," the man replied. Alex could tell this stranger wasn't being honest. "Please tell me the truth, as I need to know." The man scratched the side of his head, and more seriously replied, "It doesn't matter, but yes, at times you were shrewd, but like a lot of people in high-stress careers you have to be." I'm not here for any bad reasons. I just want to help you and see you recover. Is that okay with you? He felt bad now. Yes, your friendship would be nice. And I'm so sorry. For the next few minutes they talked, and Alex found the stranger very engaging, which surprised him to no end. Over the next few months, the man who had now become a good friend would pop over and they would chat for hours. Alex enjoyed his company immensely. It felt so refreshing to have someone else to speak to on the lonely days when everyone else was busy with other things. For some reason, his friend didn't work at present, and when Alex asked him about this, the man seemed uncomfortable. Even though the winter months were approaching quickly, the weather on certain days would be like the month of April. And on these days, the kind man would take Alex out on nice long walks through the city, occasionally visiting the park where the birds would sing joyously. One day when it rained and everywhere was grey and gloomy, the man asked him a strange question. Do you remember? What of you, in my previous life? Alex said, wishing in some ways he did, but what if he didn't like what he saw? I'm afraid I don't, I'm so sorry. His friend smiled, then replied, since I've been coming round, your recovery has been very good, and if you don't mind me saying, I need to ask something of you. Alex placed a hand on the man's shoulder and said, ask me anything, dear friend. The man coughed nervously. I want you to join me on a venture which I've been planning for a very long time. And I think you're the man for the job. Interest overtook him, and with excitement in his voice, said, tell me more. The day had finally arrived. The two men stood proudly outside the shop. So, what do you think? Alex peered at him, then replied, for the first time in as long as I can remember, I feel like I have a purpose in life again. I can't thank you enough. The man suddenly laughed. Thank me, dear friend? You don't need to show me any gratitude at all. If it wasn't for the money you had saved in the bank, then this venture would never have happened. Just above the window of the shop was a sign which said in big dark letters, a bookstore with the best and cheapest books available. That looks great, mate, was all that Alex could think of saying. He felt so happy he wanted to cry. He wiped his eyes and promptly put the tissue back into his trouser pocket. There's nothing wrong with showing emotion, the man said, placing a hand on his mate's shoulder. Alex could feel another headache coming on. I think I've had a very big day, but now I need to rest a bit. Do you mind, Gordon? Gordon gave him a concerned look, then said, we'll get through this together, and I promise you one thing. From now on, a new adventure awaits. And I'm so happy you're sharing it with me. Alex began to cry. And as Gordon helped him to the entrance, he said softly, come on, good friend. Let's head inside the shop and have a nice cup of tea. The end.